haven't even said anything yet. Can I go out on top? Can I leave now? Okay, so. What was for lunch, by the way?
Nothing. We were on $10.
It wasn't a surprise?
They gave me a $10 credit.
Oh, I guess that's a surprise. I thought they were going to have WroflCon again. You guys remember that from 2 years ago? Really? Yeah, no, I slept through WroflCon last year, and that was probably like the most upsetting morning of my life to find out that I missed a waffle truck. Cool, so thank you all for coming here. I'm actually really glad that this is a kind of small, intimate audience because what I'd like to do is kind of kick off a conversation. So I'm just going to start with a few words, and I hope kind of by the end of that we'll have some sort of a lively kind of discussion or debate going. So who here was here 4 years ago? Just show of hands. Okay, so a fair number. You were here. So for those of us who weren't here, it's pretty similar. But 4 years ago, this was the first time that the internet kind of showed up in one place together, and it was awesome. It was incredible, right? We all showed up to worship. Tron guy's not here, but a man in tights, a man with a funny dance, and a guy who yells Leroy Jenkins, and it was really special. It was the first kind of gathering of its kind, but it was really small, right? Like we represented this really kind of small niche of the internet. The internet had not kind of gone, our culture hadn't really gone mainstream. I mean, at that point, the two best examples of internet memes were lolcats and Rickroll. So, pretty dark time for us in our short history, and I apologize for both of those. And so now, obviously, that's like totally different. This conference represents more of a summit of sorts for the kind of movers and shakers in the memeverse. I think Christina said it, starting kind of kicking off the conference. 1 in 8 of the people attending right now are our guests, are memes themselves. And so we've seen this like huge explosion in content, right? And so our culture, something that was kind of like niche and nascent 4 years ago, is now is freaking everywhere, right? Tumblr is something like 1,000 times larger than what it was 4 years ago. There's a fuck yeah XYZ Tumblr probably created every other minute, and this culture is just kind of out there and everywhere. And so it feels to me like we kind of went from being, again, this like niche kind of a culture where if you thought of our ecosystem of sorts, it was this kind of cylinder where there were very few people creating content to be consumed by like very few people. And now we have this like huge inverse pyramid where there are tens, if not hundreds of millions of people kind of consuming and enjoying this culture. And what I think is kind of particularly fascinating about that, though, is that it feels like kind of the bottom piece of this pyramid, kind of the point at which it's all resting on, us, hasn't changed. The number of people that are creating at the bottom of this pyramid is pretty much the same number. And now there's this huge demand for this content, right? And so there are kind of like a lot of mouths to feed, and we've seen this surge in aggregators, right? We've seen, Cheeseburger, it started with kind of eBaum's World and Cheeseburger, and now most recently 9gag. Who's here's not familiar with 9gag? Okay, if you are, oh wow, okay. So 9gag is obviously huge now and wasn't a year ago. But these aggregators kind of fill this void and are kind of like pumping out all this content for these people to consume. And I think there's something really special is lost when kind of content isn't consumed in the same place that it's created. And traditionally, our culture was kind of the spawn of internet forums, right? Internet chat rooms, forums, and communities. And these places were places like 4chan, Reddit, YTMND, Something Awful. This was like ground zero for internet culture. And like I like to kind of joke around, but it's also kind of true that I was kind of raised on 4chan, right? I'm 24. I've spent 8.5 years on 4chan. That's a third of my life. It's a pretty terrifying amount of time, actually. And if you're younger than I am, like I think there are probably people browse 4chan for closer to half their life, which is truly terrifying. And so these kind of communities are really dear to me, but I feel like, forums are the dinosaurs of the modern web, right? Like, I mean, how many 13-year-olds are growing up on forums, right? We're all kind of, they're growing up on Facebook, not on forums, because the interest-driven web, the way that we used to kind of find each other with this kind of interest, this hierarchy of, of Usenet and kind of like directory, GeoCities, remember, it used to be, again, it was internet cities. There's this concept that you had to really like kind of whittle down to find, to find out where you needed to be, has kind of given way to the friendship-based web where, it's just a lot easier to kind of, find your people and to find things. And so social networking and identity-based communities, I think, have kind of led to the demise of what I think of as old communities. And I would say the test of kind of what constitutes a community is to kind of borrow from Tim O'Reilly. So when you ask Tim O'Reilly, like, what is it that O'Reilly Media does or stands for, Tim has always said that it's his goal to create more value than he captures. That's really important to him. And I think the test of a good, true community is, does it create more value than it captures? And value is something that can be abstract, right? Like it doesn't have to just be money. And I think by that test, sites like the aggregators, sites like Cheeseburger and 9gag, I think they fail that, because I don't think that harvesting user-generated content and wrapping it in ads and Facebook comments constitutes, I don't think there's value there, or I don't think that they're returning kind of value into this ecosystem. And I think kind of what we've also seen is that, I mean, to be fair though, they've kind of bridged our culture to the mainstream, and that mainstream is exploding, right? I mean, the number of people that have been added as users to the internet is exploding, but these people that are experiencing the web, these kind of like young people, are experiencing it in a kind of fundamentally different way than we did, because they're growing up with, again, a much different experience. They're not being raised in IRC chat rooms and on AOL buddy lists. They're being raised kind of by Facebook. And tribe finding is something that, again, used to be really hard. Like, finding where your kind of virtual home was something that took like weeks, months. And then when you finally found it, you were really kind of emotionally invested. I mean, it was this big deal. I don't know, like say you were a kayaker, right? I don't know. Like it used to be hard to find like that place where you could go and I think, talk about those things. And when you finally found it, it was somewhere that was really special and you really kind of like made it your home. And so it was kind of like you were searching for a village to place your tent. And now I think we kind of have the opposite, right? Where it's people kind of expect to just place their tent in a desert, and then they wake up the next morning and the village is there. Essentially, that's what like Facebook does with, or any kind of social service now is like contact importer, right? It's like you join, there's nothing there, import your Gmail contacts, and like bam, you're in business. Everything is there at your fingertips. And so I think that things are essentially like really easy now in that sense. And again, like these news users kind of have it really easy. And so when I think back on like my best times on the internet, I actually think back to AOL. Like I miss AOL. It was really awesome. Exploring via channels and keywords and chat rooms and like I remember when the buddy list launched. Like this, I mean, was really special for me. And in terms of like the forums that I was a member of, I was a user of Something Awful for a really long time. And remembering like what constituted a meme back then, I remember. Are you guys familiar with this PowerBook story, the PowerBook? Yeah. So right. So like that. I don't think you guys would be clapping if I just mentioned Advice Dog, by the way. But so PowerBook was this incredible story where this guy goes on eBay, wants to sell a laptop. This scammer contacts him, says, hey, I'm going to give you $2,000, buy it now. I want to use escrow, though. I'm going to send you Western Union, and you have to ship it to another country. And so this guy like obviously thinks to himself, okay, that sounds a little bit off. And so he's kind of faced with this dilemma of, do I contact eBay customer support, or what should I do? Like, so he goes to Something Awful, and they say, let's scam the scammer. Let's play this guy. He's trying to play you. Let's really kind of string this all out. And so over the course of 2 weeks, they decide they want to actually mail him something, and they decide that thing should be a binder, a notebook of sorts. And they take old dirty keyboard keys, super glue them into this binder, draw a display, and actually wrote "This is real" on it. which is like this, that's like the ring on Goatsee's finger. It's like it really just makes it. That's that magic. It's that magical touch. And then they also figured out, like, oh, wait a minute. If we set the declared value to this really high, then the guy's going to have to pay a duty on it to claim it. So he'll be out money. And then not only that, another member said, hey, I live across the street. I can set up a webcam where we can watch this guy pick up his package. And so we can have, like, photo, we can document this whole thing and have kind of like photo evidence of who this guy is. And so there were kind of ups and downs. It got held by customs and they had to call in and release it. But ultimately, the scammer claimed it and had to pay money for this, and there was just like, people were dancing in the streets, because again, they scammed the scammer. But again, like that story is so like fun to tell and to kind of relive, because, I mean, memes are that, right? They're stories, and I think part of the magic of them is to be a participant in it, and that doesn't mean like an active participant. I mean, even an observer, I think, is a participant, but to watch how these things kind of materialize and develop, and to see kind of the genesis. It's not so much the product; it's the it's the path that it takes. It's that kind of twisting, winding kind of path by which lots of people get their hands on something and it kind of gets changed, and then there's this product where everybody kind of has like a little piece of themselves represented in that end product. That's kind of really special. I mean, like a good meme, I think, is kind of like the, Diana pointed this out last night when we were talking, kind of like the tip of an iceberg, right? It's like the iceberg that sunk the Titanic. Like at the surface, it's something very kind of simple and maybe trivial, but beneath the surface, there's something actually like very fascinating there, and you really have to dig to see it.